That's the plan. Yeah. But we can also.
Your luggage is lost.
Yeah, yeah. We can,
Rehab, you have to come back. You're traveling tomorrow morning.
and you have I will look for that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could like send them. Yeah, it's prepare for children. Break. What?
That's fun. No, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think wall, and then we have to make the light.
Yes. Lauren, your choice. He's a worker.
No, it's my partner. Okay.
سيوطو جميلة حدث البداية معرض ووردبريس فوتو لأول مرة بعد 15 سنة أنا جيت ديزاين هنا في القاهرة في القاهرة وفي اسكندرية نعمل من سفارة هولندا نعمل قوي أنا بشكر تاني دينا حافظ وكل السفارة جاية تنسيق طبعا على هم عملوا خطر الفن من الإكرام للمؤسسات يعني أفكار اشتراكها مع المركزية الفنية والصدفة أنا بقالي سنين طويلة بس everything becomes private funds. Much again, this and this idea and الصوت اشتغل الصوت اشتغل
ترفع عشان ما تكون لانه المرفوع عندي على شوي.
المايكس كلها بقى عشان تعرف كده كويس؟ اوكي. طيب انا كنت بقول ان انا I wanted thanking the work thanking the Warendorf Forum first for making it very smooth to connect and to establish a very promising partnership that probably that will be for the first time. Thank you for that. For all the amazing work raising such a huge conflict and really such amazing education. Not just education, but also education because we are always concerned with education as a first thing, like on top of our list. And I would like to first thank Heba Khamis because she was the one who connected me to Babette, and she seen so many layers of suffering through me. Again, Heba, she is our pride. She is a two-time winner of the Warendorf Photo. When it was too hard to win back then, it's still hard. Not to belittle what Heba has done, but it was way harder back then. I take so much pride of our local government scene, and especially the international. And our goal as Ethiopia is to bridge hands and to bring the best international instructors and regional ones. It's not that the Egyptians are brilliant and they have local instructors, they have educated the whole scene in that the past years, and I want to thank everyone for this. And again, because the one was not high enough, I want to thank the Dutch Embassy for all their massive support and Dina Hafiz for working non-stop for a whole year together to bring this to life. And I'm just so happy and I'm hosting this by Ismailia, and I want to thank Karim Shafat again. And I'm sure he left. Thank you everyone for partners of social media just to bring this, bring us to where we are tonight. And I'm leaving with this family, and we are so proud that Heba Farid is now a jury member. She's a jury member on the African continent the WordPress photo. So amazing. Finally, يا جماعه قدموا في الوردبريس فوتو مهمه جدا بتحطكم على الخريطه في السي في بتاعكم غير ان في جايزه ماليه بس جريت اتشيفمنت. فالسنه الجايه السنه دي قفلت السنه الجايه قدموا دلوقتي بقت اقليميه فبقى عندك فرصه انك تقدم على سي في قاره فرصه ان مصر تكسب اعلى نسبه. فالسنه دي انا بحيي مصر كسبت فلسطين كسبت واستراليا كسبت. فبجد يعني قدموا وكملوا في الموضوع. انا هسيب بقى البانل. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marma. Welcome everyone. It's amazing to see so many of you. Thanks for coming. I'm really sorry we had to do this panel on English because of me, but I am welcome for Vicky and I'll let you know if I talk too fast. I'm sure it will be perfectly fine. So thank you, Heba, Rehab, thank you for being here. Today we are having a panel discussion about what connects us. And I first want to give you an overview of how those is going to change this year and what the results are of the exhibition and how we think that changes also trends in storytelling. And that we have the best experts in these changes in storytelling sitting on the stage. So I'd like to discuss that with you afterwards. And feel free to ask any questions you would like. There's someone with microphones walking around. Drop a by as well. This is a late night discussion, so we are just here also to learn from each other and to have fun. So my name is Babette. I'm the creative and account manager at the exhibitions team of Warendorf for 7 years now. Warendorf Photo is a Dutch organization founded in 1955 by Dutch organizers that wanted to show their work on the world, and the world has always been an important part of our name, Warendorf. We believe that the stories that we all make, the audience, really need to be seen because there is a power that goes all about these photos. Photos that inspire change. This is the photo one in 1957. Laura found walking to school. One of the first black students that wanted to go to white school. Lucas Martin photo, and actually more than 60 years later, this photo is still very relevant. Black Lives Matter is a huge movement. I just want to illustrate how photos have a life, and how they also get engraved in our visual history. So Warendorf photos most important for their context. Every year we ask professional photographers to send in their work. This year we had 65,000 images being sent in by over 4,000 photographers from 120 countries. And we serve the photo community, but then we also try to bring those stories from the photo community to as many people as possible into a traveling exhibition. So that's my job of the exhibition. Before COVID, we had 120 exhibitions worldwide every year. We are almost there now with 80 to 100 exhibitions, so we're very proud of that. Because your stories really deserve to be seen by all. But we realized that Warendorf photo still has a long way to go in terms of the diversity. So we're called World Press Photo, not white male Western photographers press photo. And even though there's world in our name, only 2% of our entries were coming from the African continent, only 10% of our entries from Latin America. Every year, only about 5, 6, 7, 8% of our entries were from women. So these changes, it was changing, but way too slow. So we needed a faster change. That's why this year, or this contest, the result of this contest is completely different quality. Instead of organizing one contest, we divided the world into regions, 6 regions, as you see them here, so it's too small to read. North America, South America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe. And per region, we organize a regional jury. That makes a short list of work, and then it goes to the global jury. In every region, developers can send in their work, can send in the work they need in that region. So you don't necessarily have to have nationality in that region. And we abolished the categories. You might remember we used to have nature, environment, portraits, news. Those are gone. The only category we have now is the format. So single photos, stories, long-term projects, and a new category that's called open format. And we'll talk more about it. Also a bit too small, but here you see that for each region you have 4 winners: singles, stories, open format, and long-term projects. And overall winners: Wolfers Photo of the Year, Wolfers Photo Story of the Year, Wolfers Photo Long-term Project of the Year, and Wolfers Photo Open Format. So, what I want to show you today is that what we found really interesting was actually the results of the stories. So we really asked the jury, the regional jury, to focus on those stories that they think are important for their regions. Because from our office in Amsterdam, or from the media that we get there, we don't know what the important stories are in Southeast Asia, in Africa. It's really important for locals to tell us what we need to see. And I think that resulted in really incredible diversity of stories, both diversity of stories, but also we found more personal stories representing broader issues. Because there were more photographers from the majority world participating, there were also more sensitive safety issues, new ways of storytelling, and constructive journalism shining. So one of the diversity of voices, as I said, we asked the to read the stories to see their importance in the region. This story by Solo from Madagascar is a really good example. It's in the exhibition. It's about the Zebu War in Madagascar, and me from a lot of people from the Netherlands will probably never heard about the Zebu. You're much better informed than we are back in Amsterdam. But the jury, the African jury said it was a very important issue in Madagascar. The wars happening over the cattle. That's why it deserves to be seen. So even though the Western audience might not recognize it, it's still a very important story. It deserves to be again a platform of focus. Other examples we saw that there are issues about safety journalists. This is not a recent issue of Warendorf. This has been going on for a long time. So that means that we sometimes have to intensive also showing work photographers. This is a work by a photographer who sent in his work anonymously. That's also a possibility to send in the work anonymously, protected identities of the photographer and safety. This is Myanmar, by the way, and as you might know, happened there last week for situations as of the deteriorated. Here you see the brave protesters against the army, and I think what the jury really appreciate about this photo is that it feels like, as a viewer, you're in the middle of the photo. The photographer's right there with the action. When I give a tour, sometimes people say it's a David against Goliath, with people trying to fight with slings against a very well army. But also personal stories representing broader issues. This is a story about COVID, even though you might not think that at first glance. This is Irina Vernin, she's an Argentinian photographer, who wrote a portrait series about Antonella. And Antonella is the girl in Buenos Aires who, just like many girls during the pandemic, or many children, had to stay at home because their schools were closed because of COVID. And Marina was already following Antonella for a long time. She made these series about girls with very long hair. And Antonella said she was so devastated that her school was closed and her identity changed when she was allowed to go to school again. And she would cut her hair when she was allowed to go to school. So this is both a story about Antonella, her identity, but also about how COVID and the closure of schools affected maybe the youth the most. Because not everyone at the school is following online education. And you can see that there, Antonella using her mother's phone to be on Zoom classes, for example. Another example is a story, beautiful story by Lam Jansen, Dutch photographer who was in Afghanistan when the Taliban took over. You've all seen images when the Taliban took over of people desperately trying to leave Kabul, the airport, and there were a lot of stories of those coming into the contest. But the jury really were really looking for a story that stood out, that would teach us something new, and they chose this story by Lam Jansen. He was walking around Kabul and he found out there was a cinema in Kabul that was being closed because of the Taliban. But when he knocked on the door, he saw that there were still police coming to the cinema every day. And even though they were not allowed to work, they were not allowed to open, they would come because this was their pride. They wanted to maintain the film, the theater, to keep it nice and neat. And I think this is really a beautiful and timeless story that will become iconic, I think, in maybe 15 years time, showing the lives of individual people, how culture is affected. Even though this was taken more than 1.5 years ago, with the knowledge now that the situation is deteriorating every day in Afghanistan, this remains very probable. But it's a different way of showing the effect of the takeover of the Taliban on Afghanistan. And of course, Rehab's work, which you will see an exhibition of as well in the live houses. So also here, Rehab decided to choose a personal story, the Bedouin community in Sinai, to address a wider issue of indigenous communities being oppressed and being stereotyped. And this is also a very good example of the new open format category that we introduced. So open format is a category where photographers can kind of let go of those very strict rules of photojournalism. You're allowed to edit, to Photoshop, to send in triptychs, diptychs, and in this case, we're having a community work with the Bedouin community embroidery on the photos. This is also an open format work, beautiful series by Martinez, a Mexican photographer. As you may know, Mexico is the most dangerous country for journalists to work in. And that's one of the reasons Jan Martinez doesn't call himself a journalist, but an artist, also as a way to protect himself. And he uses these artistic ways of storytelling to address a broader issue, which is opioid crisis in Mexico, the narco-traffics, and the indigenous community in the south of Mexico and Guerrero were being forced to grow opioid amidst the narco war happening. So he takes these photos, punctures them as a symbol of the violence that is happening, and then brings the light back into the topic by putting them against light, and that's why you see those star-like effects. And another example, Cherry's drawing, she's a type photographer, a very young type photographer, taking very brave steps to show social issues and criticize the government in a country where the king is not allowing any criticism of any government issues whatsoever. She is using a Japanese technique of Katsumi to with archival images to link them to photos that she made of protests. So these are archival images of protests in the 60s, combined with images of protests in the recent images that she took herself. She then tears the photos apart and sticks them back together with the Japanese technique of golden paint. In Japan, that means when you stick something together, it becomes stronger, and it also gives it unity. And one photo you see here is a blurred image of the king. So Jennifer was actually doubting whether she would send in this work anonymously because of her safety. And she showed this photo to many people, and most people would recognize the king, even though he is being blurred. So it's a really big step and a very big risk she's taking. But in the end, she decided to send in the work under her own name. and she's been shown all over the world. So we're very proud that she's this new young generation of type of photographers using open format and new ways of storytelling to certain brings extended people. And finally, constructive journalism or positive journalism. I think it's always very difficult as journalists to how to tell constructive stories, as we people tend to be very geared towards the negatives. That's also the articles that came also clicks online. But there are also ways to tell stories in a more constructive way, and that Babette is a very good example. Telling, showing a problem and a solution at the same time. So Matthew Abbott is an Australian photographer, and his story is called Fighting Fire with Fire. And this is about originals in Western Australia that have this technique given over from generation to generation. It's called cool burning. So it's a way to burn the land to prevent bigger fires from happening. And if you see the images, this part of Australia is much greener than the images that are used to other parts that have been devastated by big fires. So, but at the same time, they're not shying away from using new techniques like drones to inspect their areas of land. So it's a really nice way of showing the effects of climate change, but also empowering the indigenous and aboriginal communities, and at the same time spectacular, visually spectacular stories. So with these examples, I would like to go to the real experts, Rehab, Heba, and Heba. And I just wanted to open the floor. Maybe we'll start with from this year, Rehab. Could you tell me about the open format classroom? How does that contribute to different forms of storytelling?
Well, thank you, Babette, for the intro. Can you guys hear me? Oh, can you hear me? Sorry. Great. Thank you. Well, I'm a big advocate of challenging the traditional documentary approaches, because I feel that we're in that phase of revolting. I feel like it's not working anymore. I feel like we can tell more layers of a story if we open up our storytelling methods to something that's beyond the telephone, something that invites other mediums and possibly invites other, protagonists, other voices to tell the story. I feel like open format is a great opportunity for that. It's going to encourage and advocate for photographers, future photojournalists and documentary photographers to bend the rules and to experiment in order to tell stories that involve different voices, that have different layers, that are maybe a bit more profound, a bit more less flat than what we're used to from the past.
Thank you. Eva, what is your experience using these new ways of storytelling?
Has been a long journey doing this, because I started with the journalism in 2011. And then I felt that it's not enough, because I lived in the food chain and we were seeing but why we doing this and this, more those people more. So I started to share that slowly more into all the ways of storytelling. And then keep shifting also like either from photojournalism to documentary photography, like I want to be commenting, drawings and materials and taking portraits of objects and documenting. So I shifted from documentary to storytelling, visual storytelling, because it's more open. And then I felt now it's not enough. Since 2016 I started this kind of art therapy. It's kind of guided with asking people to draw what I reflect on what I say and the questions I'm asking. So it's not really academic, it's more about this collaborative process, exploring the feelings, and it became part of, it came sort of collecting visual codes instead of codes and words, because when people draw with their hands, it tells way more than just words, because you can see what they cannot even see themselves. And then I said, okay, then I'm not really a visual storyteller, and I'm now doing some sort of research and trying to understand it's kind of psychology with storytelling, and it's way more than that. And then after a while, I feel like, no, it's not visual anymore, it's storytelling. I'm a storyteller. So I tried different stuff, but mainly was drawing to connect visual codes from people, because some people they words really want to be like using words is a bad talent. But with drawing it can be like a single line, two lines, tells me way more than that. So that's what I'm trying.
So you're actually actively asking your story that you're telling the people whose stories you're telling to participate in their story.
So, for example, one of the girls who was interviewing, the girls I was interviewing, they are 10 and 12 years old, and they was in the first gardening, and one of them was asking me, okay, does it hurt? Yes. How do you feel when it? They cannot really do it. But when you give them the paper and ask them to, can you draw yourself with me? They draw themselves like a princess, looking at the world. Then you realize that she's a princess with this fancy dress and high heels and jewelry. She's this flattering breast and she's it. This represents the beauty standard in your mind. And this tells you way more than what she can say as a young kid. That's about the drawings of this process.
This is very interesting because you won the Wolfers Photo Award in the Advanced Beauty about Red Ceremony. Because you send it in a more traditional photorealistic way, but actually there is different layers of this story. Would you consider sending it differently now that there is this open format text?
I sometimes, to be honest, I'm thinking of Farid now to send on many things, and I'm not really ready to show the work, but it's the open format. Somehow to learn it's becoming a trend now, and I'm not sure what format. Yeah. I'm not really sure if I love that. And I love the work. But somehow when you speak to young photographers, all of them now want to be open format photographers. Doing great things. It's fine now. So I'm watching out at this place now to just sound concerned to position myself. Because when your questions as well, you send me, you start getting good podcast.
Yeah.
Overcoming you to include videos and podcasts.
I think it's a good thing that younger photographers don't think about telling stories in a form format. I think it's actually a good thing. It becomes a trend or whatever, but it just allows people to tell stories. You know, it allows people to expand their visual language beyond photography. That is good, even though maybe some people would take it as an easier way to tell stories, but at the end, people will not receive or feel the stories unless it is actually being told in a genuine manner, you know. So I feel it's a good thing, even though I know that a lot of young photographers think it might be a way out of, you know, an easy way out of, you know, telling stories in the traditional manner. It's actually a lot harder because you need to tell a story in a more coherent manner with meaning to here.
Thank you. So, Heba, right? You are the co-founder of the Data and Photography Gallery, and also the ambition to found the first photo museum in Egypt, which I hope will be a dream come true very soon. So you're very well informed also on our jury this year. So how do you see this development in your gallery in Egypt happening in forms of storytelling?
That's okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes, I would agree with Heba and Rehab that there seems to be a trend in experimenting boundaries a little bit more fluid when people are trying to do I think that there needs to be work. There needs to be more venues. Can't hear anything. That's better. Much better. Can I start again? I said I would agree with Heba and that there's been more movement towards experimenting, being more fluid in image making, taking risks in imagery that I would encourage more of that and more focus on quality and production and other issues around just building the story or trying to devise how imagery will develop. Through your question.
That's interesting. You're saying actually photographers are finding their ways towards new storytelling, but there's also a different element to it, like curating your work, editing your work, printing it. And how do you see your role in that next level for photography?
The question was how that role kind of playing out. Well, my partner and I, when we started the gallery, we're coming to photography with a lot of past experience and involvement in the field. Is this better? Yeah. Is this better? Okay. Well, as a gallery that shows fine art photography, we encourage people to reach that audience and precision in their work and the dedication to their practice. So there's many elements that goes into selecting your work and showing it and making out for an audience to see. So our goal is really to make more visible the work that's being produced in Egypt or relevant to Egypt. This is our focus at the moment. And then it mirrors itself in my experience being on the jury also. As part of the bulletin, there were other jury members that were from other areas, and we each kind of carry with us an informed vision of what's happening in our area, not just in terms of the stories, but also in terms of practitioners, venues, lectures, work, the opportunities for publishing. So we're all coming to the table, looking at this vast continent and seeing. It was a privilege to see all of this work, to be given the task to interpret it, to find how it fits in the story.
now that we touched on your role as a jury, I'm sure people are very curious. The jury is still going on, the 2023 jury. But could you tell me a bit more about the process and how was it to be on the original jury? And maybe some general things, we're not allowed to disclose anything, but just a very brief insight and the role as a jury.
For sure, people who are applying to the contest are always very curious about who are the jury, what's their experience, how do they do this. So there are 5 members each, and each one of us from a region and different background. There are those who are professional in the journalistic field, in publishing, in curating, in foreign art. So I think that the organization and the press were very clear about getting a diversity, showing up on the jury, at least in this region, and hopefully it's reflected in the as well. So we're coming with different set of experience, different expectations also, and wanting to actually work together as a team, as a collective. There was that desire to connect each other because often Africa is a big continent and we do not get the chance to travel to see each other very often. So it's these opportunities that bring us together. So it's not just photographs connecting us, but it's also the process of giving them and seeing the production that's happened this year and some of the years previous. So just very briefly, all of the work is going on. It's impossible for the jury to travel. Travel to Holland to do work. So we're online together, working independently, we work as a group, we come together, we assess our decisions, our selection, we review it again, we discuss, we pull at each other, we challenge each other. I think what surprised me the most from leaving that experience that really shifted my perception a lot. And I'm someone like the other jury members where this is my word, I'm looking at imagery, looking at photos. So to be challenged that way was really refreshing, I think, for all of us. And we had goals. We had certain criteria that was presented to us by the organization, things that we had to reach, a certain structure to how met the amount of time that we met also. So I think the last thing before I again to is that part of the shift in perception was the backstory to some of the imagery. So as a jury coming from different regions, we don't all have the same experience. We don't have the same, it's not the same way of interpreting and absorbing and reacting to images. So we informed each other. So if there was something that I may have passed over or not noticed so much, and someone else would highlight it and tell me why it's important. So we include each other's selections all the time. So it was very refreshing, and now all of our selection is with the local jury. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed they don't kill your darling, the local jury. Well, thank you for sharing this experience. It's really interesting because I also want to ask the 2 photographers here. I mean, one of the reasons to make the content more regional is because we want more diverse perspectives. So my question to you is, does it matter who tells the story, and how do you deal with that yourself?
I think it matters a lot, right? I think it matters who tells the story. So when I received an email that I got shortlisted, I was really impressed that you guys asked, "What is my connection to the community?" So some people would would have different opinions about like whether are you the same nationality or not or whatever. But I think what matters most is the connection with the people who are being documented, the protagonists of the story. Of course, being from having an insider perspective really matters, but what matters more is that you're involved with the people who are part of your story. And I was honestly really happy that I received that email because the year before I got shortlisted for another project and you guys only asked me for the raw files and I'm like, wait, we learn sometimes. So I was impressed. So I think it's just really important to you don't have like I don't know like you can't there's no ethical police in photography, right? But there's still this opportunity for such a contest to encourage photographers to invest time to get to know the community members where they're working. And it's not just about if they're, if they're local. It's not just about that. It's actually about being connected to the community, to involving them in the process itself, whether it is involving them visually by inviting them to be part of the project, like my project, or involving them in taking control over the representation, how they would like to be represented in the project. I think this is really important. And the fact that you guys are now focusing on that really matters. And once that is answered, like I don't care if the photographer is from the same country because they have shown respect to the people that they're working with. Of course, it's definitely going to be different if the photographer is local because they give an insider perspective. But as long as they're respecting the protagonists, as long as they have this ethical responsibility to tell the story in a way that respects how the protagonists would like to represent. I think that's the number one priority in my life.
Thank you. And Heba, as a follow-up question, you've done a very difficult story about restoring the community story. How did you establish trust? How did you gain access to the community?
It was, I think, my trip, she asked me, how come you come here to Cairo from Egypt, completely covered, even your hair is covered, and you're asking me to show you my daughter naked to the first time. And this was a lot of logical question. It's around the conversation that happened between us. And my answer to her saying that, okay, if I see someone hurting your daughter, I would take off this scarf to cover her. And then we kept talking about the key of the story, why it's the key of the story, that's approaching the story through the love, not through the first island. I'm not looking at this mother that she's doing first island to her daughter. I'm looking at this mother and having the conversation with her that she's afraid that her daughter will get raped and she lost her daughter and she has to do it because she has no right to it. And when you understand the concept behind things there, you're not forcing anyone to be. It shows people that you respect them and you understand them. And then in the process, while making the images, I covered first person, story about first island, to the first images. And that show them respect because it doesn't make sense to go like mothers are trying to cover the mothers are trying to hide their daughters from the medical to show their daughters to the world where it doesn't make sense. So it's about this process and how when they see how you treat their daughters and how you try to protect them. Even some mothers, for them, because in Africa they go topless, some countries, some families even wine. But I said no that all of them. So it's about the process. And question more at something because actually media contains different types of the communities. And the role of the storytelling to fix those stereotypes and it can be done, I think, can be done by moving entrepreneurs. Because we have need the outside of point of view, the inside of point of view. Because it doesn't really cannot be isolated communities and just only us about ourselves. And then how to speak about we know we need your perspective, we need your perspective. But the local photographers has also the power, the understanding that they can fix what is media done. As an example, you see this has different stages, and this is now because African photographers have seen themselves.
Interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. That's also one of the things. I mean, well, first of all, it's part of the history, of course. Like 1955. If you go back in our history, there will be many photos that are engraved in our memory, and then also define the way we see history that might be considered problematic nowadays. And that's also what we're slowly trying to change. And I was wondering how the jury deals with those ethical issues like stereotyping. How do you consider a story, whether it's stereotyping or not? And what is your
Maybe from the point of view of the Africa jury, we're all from Africa, and so we're all very much invested in our own representation, challenging stereotypes, and supporting underrepresented stories also. So we look for that, and we're very attentive to that. For sure, there are images that we may be aesthetically drawn to that may reinforce stereotypes, but we're very quick to challenge that and understand what some of the visual tropes may be and what some coding that may be going on. You know, the jury is experienced in looking at imagery from different perspectives. So there were some debates also, especially when it came to format, long-term stories, because they are not necessarily typical traditional.
interesting? That so it must be hard as well because we will come from a similar visual background. So it must be difficult sometimes to kind of forget the visual tropes that we all know, that we all are kind of ingrained. I don't think it's anyone's fault, but it's also kind of part of our visual backpacks. I wanted to bring up the topic of safety. So, how do you cover a story in a safe way? How safe is the profession today? How, or in which way do you still tell the stories that deserve to be told?
Well, for me, this project in particular, I wasn't afraid of my safety, but I was very worried about the community safety because we talk about discrimination, we talk about the indigenous experience, and that carries a lot of statements that might put them at risk. So at the beginning of the project, I've been working on this project for over 10 years, so it went through a lot of changes, and at the beginning, it was not settled at all. It was very straightforward. But then I quickly realized that I would be putting the community at risk. And even though they're happy to be part of that and everything, but you need to realize you have a responsibility. You need to realize that before you publish your work. So. Most of the political statements became very subtle, approached by the community in order to make sure that they're not put in a harm's way.
Are those political statements that the community made themselves, or that you made them through?
No, the community made themselves, and it grew organically because instead of me straightforward talking about discrimination, I would ask them to comment on the photographs. Using whatever ways they would like. They chose traditional poetry process. So when I started to collect the polls, it actually included a lot of political statements, but in a way that if you don't realize, like if you don't understand the lines in between, you wouldn't really get it. You would think that they're just talking about a flower or a bag or whatever. But it worked in a way that would protect them and in a way that would give space to talk about discrimination also in a different form that might be more intriguing for people to hear, or hear or read that poem, then understand the context behind it. That's one. And two, once the other meetings, like once the project became really fluid, it became more free for the women to also be photographers. And they would have this full control over what to show, what to hide in their work. So if a woman wants to hide her face, her identity, she can simply do that in the way. So she has this, this autonomy over her identity. So it became actually very inviting for people who were scared for themselves, who wanted to be part of this community project, to be part of it in a way that they feel comforted. And for me, I became more and more encouraged over the years to show the work, because now I feel that I'm not going to be putting anyone in harm's way. So that's one thing, that's the safety of the protagonists, because sometimes we don't think about that. We think about the safety of the photojournalist, the journalist, but there is also the safety of the protagonists that we need to keep in mind. And I'm gonna leave the safety of the photojournalists to Heba. Yeah.
Heba, I'm the trailer.
Easy questions for you, Heba.
Because I do mostly topics about money related to money, and it's somehow close to communities and system communities that it's hard to enter, and it's all about the trust. And what concerned me the most, one of the most project was the Networks project that won in 2019. It was about strange refugees doing gay prostitution to survive children. And those guys, if they don't have a need to know what they are doing, they don't get care of them. Even in Germany, they would send someone to kill them. So all of the project is anonymous, and all the names changing. But also one other thing is that each person has a special tool that you can recognize the person from that you so the family. So what we agreed on that no real names, no faces, no names. And then we were playing a game. After I did the images, I printed them and then gave them to the guys. And we tried to recognize who's in the image. So the guys themselves didn't recognize each other. So that was like, okay, we'll check and see. But then after a while, that was the last project I published. I tried to start other projects over a while. Taking years now, I won't finish it because I started to have other concerns. It's not about safety, it's about mental health and about psychology. Because, like when you go to a therapist, is this working out? Okay.
I'll give the difference actually. Sorry, Miss, for totally blown away. But since 3 years, I started to be concerned about the psychological process of photography. Because we speak about, at least for me, I speak about vulnerable people. And I'm not sure if they quite understand what it means to say yes to photography. And when you speak about
sensitive issues. For example, if you go to a therapist, you have a kind of verbal contract that this is a therapeutic relationship. It's confidential. It's going out. We are not friends. We are not anything. We are having this relationship here. You can speak openly with you. But then as photographers, we go to vulnerable, at least we speak for myself, go to vulnerable people and they open up and they trust me because they see me. And we build kind of relationships. And some of them, they consider me, well, it's not really real, but somehow friends. You know, and if you're not a friend, you're not a professional therapist, you're not anything, you just go take the story and try to help out, and even after you finish the project, it's not enough. And then you take this story out, it gets out of control because you cannot control anything. And one of the people I photographed in the transgenders project, this was like a red flag for me to stop, think and rethink everything. Because actually this person is a son of a famous actor, Shamsali. He's a very famous actor. And when I photographed him, actually he's the one who approached me because he saw my images in one of his photos. He liked the images. And then he started to search for the photograph. Oh, she's an Egyptian photograph. And then, oh, she's doing a transgender. Oh, I'm a trans. Would love to be in her project. And we built this connection was locally. And I looked at him as a new trans man. I didn't speak or publish anything about his father. For me, he's the son of this actor. But then a year later, his dad announced it on the TV. Publicly. And all Egyptians know the story. And all Egyptians suddenly love this support from the famous actor. His son transmitted, and everyone is just like praying for more and celebrating him and his praying for that. And then when we started to support the LGBT community, they started to hate him. They actually had 2 cases against him in the court. His life is destroyed. He cannot. Psychologically, he was like, loving. And I was worried about him, but that made me think, what if, actually, the image I published, someone commented online and says that isn't it now with Shamsi? What if this one process happened to my image? I was really, I don't remember anyone. Even though I did good, and he was happy, and even when we had later with people, he spoke about our process together and how we loved it and how we were there was another thing. But he didn't expect what was going to happen, even though he's the one who approached it. So I had this moment to stop and think, I need to take a break and really reflect and rethink about the whole process because everything is out of our control. Even though you can't really think that and you say, I will do everything right, even though they watch you and they want to be in your images, but they don't really understand what it means to be out online and on media. So I don't really have an answer on safety in the mental process. It's easy to protect identity. It's easy to protect your safety and because it's very it's easy to protect the body and the identity. It's not easy to protect the mind, the soul, the mental, the mental. Because both of us sort of this.
Thank you for sharing those impressive stories. I guess it also reflects on like the incredible power this photos have like you as a photographer. And that it's sometimes very difficult to realize when you're participating in a project. I can imagine also if you're starting a project, it's really hard to see sometimes where it's going, like how big it will grow. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I wanted to finish up with the some tips from our expert here. Seeing so many images in your gallery, but also as the jury. Do you have any tips for aspiring photographers, professional photographers in the audience, if they want to enter, win awards, or like, what are the do's and don'ts? One do, one don't is also fun.
Maybe something can come out of what we can support in applications to help photographers to put together portfolios, working on the editing, working on the image quality, working on shipping, etc. But I think that's it's quite lonely sometimes to be working and on your own in heavy pressure, trying to see things that maybe overlook. So, photographers need to know, and I think that more than just one person as a trusted friend, but really professionals, and to do it in a more structured way, in a more in-depth way, challenging. So photographers will also learn from it and not be too sensitive and take things on a personal level, but really be challenged to develop presenting their work.
Thank you, that's a great tip. So make use of all the expertise that is walking around this festival. Heba, Farid, you're based in Cairo, here to get hold of. We have Ed Kashi doing portfolio reviews, Magishti, Ilbi, Kashi will be on with us. My colleague Amanda Meadows is in the audience. She's our lead curator. She also do portfolio reviews and a workshop on curating. So make sure of all the make use of all the expertise. Let your darlings be killed, because that's sometimes necessary. Imagine it's difficult if it's a personal project. And I really, really hope to see all your work in our context next year. Good luck at the festival. I will open the floor now for any questions you may have. Please ask as many. I'm leaving to answer them again soon. So take this opportunity, and also to our wonderful Rehab, Heba, and Heba, thank you. We are open for questions. Is there anyone? Anyone wants to run with the microphone? Venus? Sarah? Joanna? Thank you.
I'm just trying to get it started. So I have a comment and then a question. Very briefly. When you were talking about telling the stories, this is such a beautiful thing, because for so many years, as we know, it was always coming from a certain race and culture. So this is great, and I'm a big believer in that it should be stories coming from the people who are those people. But I also really appreciate that those of us who aren't necessarily of a certain culture or a certain race, I'm grateful that we can also tell stories, because you can't always help who you love. And your art speaks to you. So I worked in Haiti for 30 years, and I love that place. So I love to be able to tell those stories. But anyway, I really appreciate that these two things exist. But my question is this. For some years, World Press Photo had some very stringent rules about not over-processing, not bringing in too much, not dodging too much, and not to ruin anything. So I just was curious if you could briefly talk about whether that is true, so that these wonderful, beautiful people will know not to overdo this or things like that.
Thank you, Maggie. This one works well. You can keep that on there. Thanks for the question. Yes, so the standards of manipulation in the photo contest are still intact. So for all the categories of single, long-term projects, and stories, and it's still not allowed to manipulate your photos. So you can, there are limits. You can make black and white into color, color to black and white. you can crop, you can enhance like all the regular things you do. Your photos, but you're not allowed to add or take out any information in the photo. You're not allowed to influence the photo before taking it, as you know. I'm also a journalist, but also non-post-processing manipulating. And we do a very strict check on that. So the panels around the contents we have raw files, and we have was mentioned, just send me your raw files, and then we have a forensic check done on those files. So it happens sometimes photos are being disqualified because of manipulation. But the open formats category is much more open, and there is much more that is allowed. Thank you.
From your experiences, how much emphasis do you put on the aesthetics versus the narrative, the production values versus the story behind fictionality? Do you sacrifice?
And I think Heba figures out and talk more about the translation to move it around. Heba can provide more as a jury, but in general, the jury will equally value both. So the photo that both has to be aesthetically very powerful, because especially in the first round, juries only have a few seconds to see the photos. Imagine looking at 60,000 photos. The first round, it's just a few seconds per photo, so it really has to stand out. But in later rounds, it will also get more background information about the photo. So both the story and the aesthetics of the photo count equally. Is that right?
Because we're all professionals, so aesthetic is a strong catching our attention. So if you have a good quality, not just pictures, exposure, composition, then you get the attention of the jury members. And it also needs to be confident. You're looking for confidence. You have to understand what it is that you're seeing. So it's not just single images. Actually, only one category are single images. It's series. So you're seeing why. And so we get to understand how this selection was made. And if there may be a misselection, more expanded or more focused in certain areas.
Any more questions?
Another one. But for the photographers, are there any techniques that you follow in order to be able to build a relationship with your subject? And do you think that building that relationship makes you your to have a connection?
That's like the first part of the question.
The best part is, do you have any techniques by way of which you build a relationship with your subject, warm up to them, and get them used to you, get used to you? And the second side, do you see this as enhancing your ability to different thing that this creates? Your subject will become too close.
Well, this is my personal opinion. And once you have that connection, you start not calling them subjects. It just feels very cringy. They're people, and you're like, the first thing that you need to do is actually connect with them. And in my work, I prefer long-term projects where I give the flexibility and the freedom to establish a proper human connection with the person. And through that connection, explore the possibility of actually creating a project. If we're good to go, then I still working on the project. I don't prefer short-term projects. That's always an issue when I get commission, because when you get commissions for a specific story, you have this specific timeline that you need to finish your work in. And so if I work on an easy process, whether we have something in common, whether we're from the same community, or whether we do the same things, or lovers, for example, whatever, then I hesitate to take a project because I prefer having this mutually trusting connection first before working on a story. As techniques, I prefer in a mission story. I prefer going for maybe a month or two without my camera, just create connection, see if there's virtually chemistry that we as humans can connect. And then after that, I will introduce them to the camera, their conference, and all that. Take some shots, take some shots of me, and then we can start exploring how to create the narrative for their story. We don't accept stuff for ourselves. And when you see other person doing it, listen to that person, listen for your decision to do this and from where it comes. You start to see, okay, that's great. Life is not to life, which is causing a planning and you be able to see this great being thinker. Slow your mind while you're there. If you go there with your mind, you will start coming with what's in your mind. You will start this process, letting them surprise you, letting them use themselves. So when you start your mind and your culture, things and everything, you start to see yourself. You start to function. So it's quite nice.
Long-term projects, you do the same thing as we have when you stay with them for months, or is it a one-day project that you can?
It depends, because also in a before, created this unclear in the relationship. Because I'm not going to anything. I'm going here for a story, yes, and I'm clear about it, but then we built sort of a relationship, human relationship, and sharing part of my life, and they share part of theirs. In this internal awareness that when people doesn't live with, and then keep in touch with them, in the WhatsApp, or phone calls, and I look for them every day. So it depends on the story. So in the background project, I could go there for a year and those guys, they were seeing more in me instead of being so more. I was going to Bible actually and then my translator, she made a mistake and she said, oh, she can't do this. I was going there in Ramadan and I was hiding because I didn't want to go there because it would create a distance that you are coming here with it, you're trying to experience what's going to make sense in your community at this point. But I also didn't want to like break my husband with my project. So I explained to myself, but actually what I translated all day, that was my access. Because before we did it, you couldn't trust anyone, but we knew that's not possible. They keep chatting about it and we thought we certain person working plastic, and then shows us what we do. It's not because they're good, it's just because the reference in the mind, you're fascinated with the brain, because you come from another it means you're a good person. And every single day was growing. They were telling me that how they see home, how they feel safe around me. So it wasn't about in this project actually. The nice imaging of the project. This is the 100 images, which is this portrait from the person. I stayed for a year and a half because they needed that and they needed this. And I was trying to understand what is happening. I don't know to have this crisis. It's really far away from me. And I'm going to this one, it's for many, and I'm learning waiting in there. So I need first of all to position myself and realize their pace. And I need to position in the environment in which it was for no kind of prosperity. But for other qualities, for you, for example, I also learned French. Learning some to spend, like to keep going there, spend time there. And some other families, even me, from story, I trust the picture, spend all day with them. And they've never ever gone to my work. They go so crazy, and they just don't speak to them and see how it goes. And then when they are ready to take portrait, it's also my portrait. And when they are ready, when they allow me voice, but they allow my presence, that I start to feel just so it's about listening to their needs, listening to their wonders, what your own needs and what you want to do. It's about behavior as humans, as people, as humans, as a storyteller. You know, I don't know what everything happens because we start to sense it, we start to feel when we are allowed, when we are not welcome, and we are not welcome. Just being mindful. No reason. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions and for listening to us. I'm sorry we ran a little bit over time. There's lots of snacks, so please stay around, chat with us, and we hope to see you at the festival. Thank you.
طيب حاجة تانية ولا نظام؟ في حاجة تاني كده ولا نظام؟
مش عارف والله. شكرا.
مش كاتبين فيها غير الاكسبيشن أصلا مش كاتبين كاتبين هيدخل في الحلقة بس أنا قالوا لي بابا مرة هنخلص 10 عايز أفهم في إيه؟ يا